Hi, just welcoming everybody to the webinar today with Resourcing Inclusive Communities. I'm here with Cecile Sullivan-Elder from Family Advocacy and Clara, who is working behind the scenes to make it all go smoothly, and Catherine Mahony from Community Disability Alliance Hunter. So today, Catherine and I are going to be talking about managing our support team with some tips and tricks to hopefully help you. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so there's a picture of my son Jacob and Shannon, one of his support workers, and Amy, who is one of the emerging friends, a friend of Jacob's, who works down the street in our neighborhood. Both Catherine Mahony and I, Catherine who's joining me today, and I are on Awabakal land here in Newcastle. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're on. We'd also really like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that all of you are on around Australia, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. And we warmly welcome any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us today. So there's a little bit of housekeeping to start off. We are recording the webinar, but I will be on it, and Cecile, Catherine and Clara will be on it, but you will all be anonymous. So we have some opportunities for questions at the end, but your voice won't be heard. They'll be, and Cecile will ask those questions. So everybody else remains anonymous, but it does mean that the webinar would be available for viewing at a later date. Polls. We're going to have a couple of quick polls, quick surveys to find out about who's in the room. We'll get to those in a very quick moment. And at the end, we have an opportunity for question and answers. So if you've got a question that pops up, pop it into there's a little button, I think, on the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. If you can put your question in there, and at the end, we'll come to questions and hopefully we'll be able to answer those for you. After the webinar, there will be a survey emailed to you. It'd be great if you can complete the survey. It really helps us and Resourcing Inclusive Communities know that we're hitting the mark or where we can improve. So we'd appreciate your feedback via the survey. And if you'd like to contact Resourcing Inclusive Communities for more information and resources, the web address is www.ric.org.au. So the first question is, who is in the room? It'd be great to know who is here with today. And how confident are you in managing your supports? So Clara, I think you're going to launch that survey. Okay, Clara, have you got the results? Did the results come in for that?
Yeah, just a couple more to come.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Okay. I'm sharing now.
Okay, thanks. So we've got 7% of the people who are with us today are people with a disability. 91% are people who are family members. And we've got a couple here who are who work in the disability sector. So gives us a good idea of who's here, and welcome to you all.
Okay, here comes the second poll.
The second poll, sorry, the second poll. I forgot about the second poll. How confident are you in managing your support team? Okay, this is really interesting. There's 36% aren't confident. There's 55% of people who are reasonably confident, and there's 10% of people who are very confident. So maybe we might even get some tips and tricks for those very confident people today. Thanks, Clara. So I'm going to hand over to Cecile Sullivan-Elder, who is the Executive Officer of Family Advocacy, and she will introduce Family Advocacy and resourcing families to you. Off you go, Cecile.
Thanks, Linda. And it's a hard one, but it's Resourcing Inclusive Communities now. So, Linda, you know, you've raised a very good point, because for many years our initiative was resourcing families. So completely acceptable Freudian slip there, I think. So welcome everybody. It's great that everybody could join us on this Friday afternoon. For those that aren't familiar, Family Advocacy is a statewide organisation that was founded by families that were very much interested in progressing the rights and interests of their family member with disability. Particularly around their loved ones having access to all the normal things that we all take for granted in Australian lifestyle, like a home of their own, a regular education alongside their siblings and neighbourhood friends, a paid role, job, working in the community. So back then, 29 years ago, that wasn't on offer. Many people's lives looked very programmed. It's still actually very much the same today, sadly. So the work progresses, and 29 years later, the organisation is still very much governed by family members who still have the same vision for their family members with disability. The organisation provides across the state advocacy advice, predominantly trying to support the advocacy role of families to advocate with or on behalf of their family member with disabilities around those areas I just discussed. The organisation is staffed by families and allies of people with disabilities that are really clear on the purpose and the vision of the organisation more broadly. Another role that we have is our systemic advocacy, which actually looks at the systems barriers that present themselves that you know obviously need challenging and removing so that we can have more access and equity for people with disability and the ability for them to be able to experience life in the same ways that most people do. Now, the last piece of work is some recent funding that we get from the federal government around supporting people to engage with the work of the Disability Royal Commission. This is a really important piece of work and it will be going on for another couple of years around trying to support the engagement for families, people with disabilities directly, and for the Disability Royal Commission to hear the stories and the experiences of people and the barriers that they've come up against. So if we move the slide, whoever's the slide controller, thank you. Back in 2010, the organisation launched an initiative called Resourcing Families at the time, which is now Resourcing Inclusive Communities, with the primary focus of looking at building the capacity of people with disabilities, families and New South Wales citizens more broadly around looking at models of support, contemporary and innovative solutions around people with disabilities living inclusive lives. And that can be anything from resource development, training, conferences, events such as this. Self-management has always been a strong focus of resourcing inclusive communities. And many projects have been undertaken over the years in this area, and we've got some really exciting ones coming up, which is around creating meaningful opportunities for employment. A current project called School to Work is pretty much started already. We're looking for some fabulous staff at the moment, and it'll be kickstarting later in the year as far as reaching out to families who have children in year 7 and 8 through to year 11 and 12. So, yep, look forward to more contact with you in the future, and I'll hand it back over to you, Linda.
Thank you, Cecile. So I think I missed my introduction today. I'm Linda Hughes, and I've been working with Community Disability Alliance Hunter and the Growing Space on establishing the Self-Manager Hub. I'd love to tell you that the website is ready, but we're ready very soon, and that would be the Self-Manager Hub. selfmanagerhub.org.au. So that'll be up really shortly with everything you need to know about self-management. But today I'm here with the lovely Catherine Mahony, who works for Community Disability Alliance Hunter, CEDA, in Newcastle. Catherine was the 2019 ABC Regional Storyteller Award winner. She won the scholarship for the regional storytelling, and Kath produced a radio series called It's a Fine Line, which explores the relationship people have between themselves and people with the relationship people with disability have with their support staff. So I thought today, since we're talking about managing teams, Kath would be the wonderful person to join us. Kath, would you like to
Yeah, thanks Linda and Cecile. It's great to be with you, and hello to everybody that's joined us. Yeah, as you said, Linda, I was really fortunate to be the ABC's 2019 storyteller, and I guess I've had an interest in the relationship between people with disability and support workers, firstly because I have a person with disability, and I do manage my support team, and I guess I've really experienced the benefits and the wonderful things, and I've also come across the challenges and made a lot of mistakes, to be frank. So for those of you in the room who know you've got, you know, it's a work in progress for all of us. And so I guess, yeah, I just find the relationship quite fascinating to think about my own and other people's. And just to really let you know really quickly, I have been managing my supports. I'm self-managing my NDIS package and living in the Hunter. We have had a couple of more years than some other parts of the country to get used to it. So I've been managing my own team since 2014. And yeah, great to be with you and share what we can about self-managing and our supports in particular.
Thanks, Kath. And I've got a link at the end to your radio series as well,
Great.
so people might like to tune into that.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. So I thought that we would start again Monday. It was not last week. It was on Monday. We had on Monday we had a webinar on visions. So I wanted to start again sort of talking about the power of having a positive vision. And once again, today what we're talking about, it starts with the person with a disability or yourself, whether that's your family member or yourself, and thinking about that big picture and what you're wanting to achieve, you know, how you can live your best life. So it's once again having the vision and letting your dreams determine your needs. And that will help us think about what we're looking for when we're thinking about our goals, what we're wanting to achieve, and what support we might need to get there. And I just wanted to really note as well, not all support is paid support. Today we are talking about our support teams, which are paid support, but I just wanted to really acknowledge that sometimes, you know, when we're thinking about ways we could be supported, it doesn't always mean paid support. But today, and when we're talking about support teams, it could be just one person. You might just have one person who helps you with support, or you might have 2 or 3. And in our case, in my son's case, we have 7 support workers. Oh my gosh, sorry.
While Linda just is getting that sorted, I just wanted to say that one of the things we've been interested in thinking about at the moment, my peers with disability and I are actually using our paid supports to enable us to make contributions and in fact support our informal supports, if you like. So not only are we thinking about our paid support team, but it's really using that support team so that we can have those valued roles and relationships in our families and broader communities.
Thanks, Kath. So there's a number of ways that you can engage support, and this is so I just want to make sure I'm on the right slide. I've gone too far ahead, so I'm going to go back. So ways to engage support. So this is around self-management, gives you a lot more freedom in how you engage your support. You can use a service provider, just, you know, the sort of a traditional service provider, and have a support worker come to you. And there's some ways where you might get some additional flexibility through that. There's engaging somebody who is a contractor with their own ABN, who's running their own small business. You can use platforms such as Mabel, CareSeeker, and HireUp. So these are platforms that are sort of almost like matching platforms for people who need support and people who require support. Sorry, people who need support and people who provide support. There's shared management organisations. There's some organisations that have really opened up to the idea of sharing management between themselves and the person who requires support. So there's Good Directions. There's My Supports and Includer in Newcastle are organisations which have sort of tended to take a more innovative approach to sharing support with people with disabilities and their families. You can directly employ your own support workers. There could be some small independent businesses that might offer a niche services like that you're after. For example, gardening, or a gardening service, or a catering service. So it's a really opportunity to get creative, to find the skill set you're looking for. If you're requiring, for example, meal prep, it might be great to use a local caterer. Or if you're wanting to establish a small business growing herbs, then there's a person who might be assisting you, might be someone who works for a gardening agency. Also looking in a similar way, looking at labour hire and temp agencies. And I know, Kath, that's an avenue you've explored as well.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. There's a variety of ways. There might be other ways that aren't here. So if you know of other ways of engaging people that could be useful for others to know, they'd be really interested to hear from you. So one of the things that's going to be really useful is recruiting to get the right match in role. So it's really a matter of identifying the role that you require. So quite often, when we're recruiting for a support worker, we're looking for somebody we like, and then we're sort of a bit disappointed because they're not able to do everything that we need, or they might not have the skill set for a particular area we're looking for. What we sort of tend to find is that we almost expect our support workers to be everything and all and everything to everybody, and in reality, that's very, very rarely possible. So if you think about what role that you're looking to recruit for, is it a social connector? Is it somebody who can help you connect with other people in the community and other organizations and help you develop your relationships? That person might be quite different, then the tasks in that role might be quite different to a job coach who's helping you establish your business, or a domestic god or goddess. So if you start thinking about the actual role, what are you needing support for? What role will assist you? And then what tasks does that role involve? So thinking about the tasks that are involved. For example, a personal care attendant would be assisting someone getting up and dressed in the morning. A job coach would assist you with establishing your own business, and it probably would be an advantage if they've got skills in the area or the business area that you're looking at. So a domestic goddess would be helping you with home-based tasks. So what are the tasks that you need assistance with? And a personal assistant might be assisting you to access information, or there's a whole range of roles there. So there's a range of roles that and the tasks that are involved in those roles. It's worth really identifying what tasks they are.
Linda, I was just going to jump in and say, for me, I'm blind, and so knowing what looks good in my wardrobe and what clothes to buy and not buy. So I've actually done some work with a stylist, just because it was, an innovative kind of support that I wanted to try. Yeah. So, and I was just also going to say, sometimes the way we find support workers is through word of mouth and sort of friends of friends. So my personal assistant was recommended by somebody who knew the tasks that I needed assistance with and suggested the right person. So it's always kind of having your feelers out for what other people are doing and what's working and who knows who. So yeah.
And I think the thing about looking at the tasks that are involved, if you're sort of finding yourself having a really broad list of tasks, if you're wanting the person who gets you up in the morning, you might be looking at, someone who assists you to get up in the morning. They might not be the right person to assist you going clubbing on a Saturday night. So if you're looking at like a really broad set of skills or tasks, then you might need to think about that. So once you identify the tasks, I suppose what you're identifying is the skills that are required. So, actually what skills does that particular job require? And, people come with their own sets of skills, and then there's some skills you can teach. Kath, there's some skills that that are really important for support workers to have when they're working with you, but there's some things that you're really able to teach people. So,
I guess as an example, you know, it's quite, I am blind, so I like to use what's called a sighted guide. So I hold on to my support worker's elbow and we get out and about and do what we need to do. So that's a really easy skill to transfer. And then in a minute, we're going to talk about sort of some of the values and some of the aptitudes that you can't necessarily teach a person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a saying that you can recruit for attitude and recruit for attitude and values and teach the skills that are required.
Yeah, that's certainly my experience.
So, so it's really worth identifying what skills are required and what you can teach and what actually needs to be there. So, you know, attention to detail tends to be a skill that people have or don't have. So you might be looking for someone who's got good attention to detail as a skill that they already have, rather than trying to teach something that might not be one in their tool bag of skills. Values and attitudes are really important, and I think that when we're recruiting, we always think that it's important that people support the human rights of people with disability and their inclusion and equality. But there might be other values, and an example here is a friend was going to a cousin's wedding and he wanted his support worker to help him buy a present for the groom and groom, and the support worker made a homophobic comment and wouldn't support that person to buy a present. So you can really see there's a values mismatch there. So really starting to think about what values are important to you, and that certainly will be around supporting your inclusion and your human rights, but it's also might be around other areas. It might be that you want someone who's really environmentally conscious, or you might want someone who who supports a certain cause, or so it's just part of that match. You don't want to be sitting down at the breakfast table with somebody who's talking about things in the news in a way that you find offensive, for example.
In many respects too, if I could just interject too, and I've heard other families that do this type of work speaking about it, it's matching the values of the person and the families and the people that you're bringing on board.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And as I said, we always thought about the values around disability, but it goes far further than that. It's really important to get a good match. If you're wanting to go fishing, you need someone who knows how to fish. You need a fisherman to support you. So it's just really obvious that you share interests with the person and really identify the qualities that you're looking for. So, we usually want honesty and kindness, but if you're doing an exercise program and you want someone who can deliver a bit of tough love, then that might be a quality that you're also looking for. So once again, if you sort of find yourself looking at a broad set of tasks and a broad set of skill sets, you might need to narrow that down and perhaps look at recruiting perhaps 2 people with different skill sets for a role. So one of the examples I've sort of got is a bit of a cricketer. In cricket, there's someone called an all-rounder who's reasonable at batting and reasonable at bowling, but they're not the best batter and they're not the best bowler. So if you want the best batter and the best bowler, you recruit for that, and rather than going for the all-rounder. And then sometimes you just get the skill sets just too broad, and you want the all-rounder who can also play Aussie rules football and rugby league and just to use a whole bunch of sporting metaphors. But you're going to find that you're going to find someone who's average at all of those things rather than someone who excels at them. Whoops. So this is just an example of some support roles and some skill sets that we have for Jacob, and there's an example with Kath as well. So for Jacob has a personal care attendant. So that's personal care attendant helps Jacob get up and ready in the morning. And we want someone who's reliable. We need to turn up bang at 7:30 each morning, and they need to be honest and reliable. So there's some of the attitudes and values we're looking for. They need to be a morning person. And I think this is really interesting because you might want a morning person who's like, hey, let's get up and nice and bouncy and gets you sparked for the day. Or you might want a morning person who doesn't talk to you until you've had your second cup of coffee. So it's kind of those sort of things that you need to consider.
A wise morning person.
A wise morning person. Yeah. And once you sort of really identify those skills, you might see other areas where those skills are potentially available. So when we looked at that, we sort of thought, well, the role requires attention to detail. We require someone who can really really follow the drill, who can follow the procedures. They need to be fairly fit and strong. And we started to think about what skill sets, and one of the very similar areas was a beautician came up as really, really similar to someone who provides personal care. There's other sort of skills as well. Hairdressers as, whoops, I'm sorry, I've slid past the slide by accident there. But it's, there's a range of other skills that might also suit, like a hairdresser, lab technician, and we've actually found a winemaker for that role as well. So by comparison, the role of social connector is a role where we are asking someone to assist Jacob to explore connections in the community. We need someone who's really socially confident and can just break the ice really nicely and had those lovely pro-social skills. We tend to find that this role's quite creative and someone who's seeing opportunities. And I think by comparison, we don't want a creative personal care attendant with Jacob getting up and ready in the morning. We want someone who can just follow the drill. But for a social connector, you want someone who's got much more creativity, really good community links, community networks, who's willing to share their community, willing to share their own social networks, and probably somebody who's also a similar age. So there's some of the skills and qualities we're looking for. And we've got musicians, artistic people and we know that also people who do really well at customer service and hospitality are also really ideal for these roles.
Actually, Linda, I was just thinking, you and I met someone when we were in the pub, like absolutely literally at the pub, and and we were really, really impressed with this person's sort of aptitude and natural connection with a few of us with disability. We all noticed that it was a really easy but understanding kind of relationship, and that person would think of things that would make our time at the pub easier and more enjoyable. And so she then has moved on to become a support worker.
We hit her up. We said, have you thought of disability support work? So, and yes, she's moved into that sector. And Kath, your I've got your in the table here is the role that you recruit for, which is personal assistant, which is an admin type of role.
Yes. So so for me, one of the most challenging things is accessing print information and also electronic things. Like there's sometimes websites might claim to be accessible, but they're quite sort of clunky and unwieldy. So I have an admin assistant or a personal assistant who does just that kind of, okay, I need to get this paperwork done, I need to fill this form in, I need to sort out my, just personal budget. That person assists me a little bit with my NDIS invoicing and claims, claims and payments. And just kind of just works with me to try and make sure that I'm on top of those systems. And the other one, I guess, for me, I am a singer, love to be part of music. So I found someone who was willing to learn Braille music with me. So she didn't know Braille music, but she's pretty cluey with music and with computer software. So we're working together on learning to transcribe Braille music, which is something I've been wanting to do for years and years and years. So that's it's nice to be bringing that dream to reality.
That's awesome, Kath. And who knew there was Braille music?
Yeah.
Okay, Kath, I was actually just thinking I should be telling you what slides we're on. Sorry.
I'm good.
You're good. Okay. Yeah. So once we sort of start to think about the role and the tasks that are involved, we're able to write a job description or a position description, and that gives us really a lot of clarity about what the role might look like. It also helps us design an ad for support workers. So, traditionally, and it still happens, when people get support workers, when a traditional disability service, sends along a support worker to work with you, traditionally what it is like, it's almost like a managerial decision about who is available at the moment that you require support. And there's someone in the background doing a whole lot of rostering, and Joe Bloggs is available, and that's the support worker you get. So when you actually go to the trouble of recruiting a support worker and identifying the job description and the tasks involved, it's a little bit more work up front, but you're actually getting somebody who's going to be able to meet your needs much more appropriately, and certainly help you achieve your goals, working towards your goals. It's not just a matter of having someone to just be there and do whatever. It's actually a much more goal-orientated support. It doesn't mean you have to be always working on your goals. It might be some times when you're just, doing some relaxing things and they're supporting you there. But really, it does mean that you're able to look at, the right support worker to achieve your goals and move you towards achieving your vision. So I do recommend writing a job description. If you're not into writing it, do a little short video. You can put it on YouTube, even when you're advertising. The thing about ads is to make them positive and exciting. One of the things that I feel really happy about is when I've advertised for support workers for my son, what I often get is a comment, I really liked the sound of this job. It sounds different to other disability jobs. And I like the idea that it stands out amongst other disability jobs as something different. And the people who want a traditional job in a traditional disability service, they don't apply. They're not interested in something new and exciting that actually focuses on a person with a disability. So that's one of the sort of good things about thinking about your ad, that it stands out from the traditional ads that are available, that we see service providers putting out. There's lots of places to advertise in a sort of formal way. I haven't put down Ethical Jobs, but that's one of the places you can advertise for a fee. There's Indeed. Universities have a careers hub, all of the universities around Australia, TAFE, etc. And they're free ads. And then there's Seek, and there's Ethical Jobs, as I said. There's a Care one as well, which I've never had much luck with. There's a specific disability place to add jobs, to advertise jobs, and I've never had any luck there. Gumtree and things like that are also free. So that's one place where you could advertise. I think message boards and online platforms, like some of those platforms where you can match a support worker, there's message boards there. So you could put an ad there to a platform where there's already support workers looking. The other thing I think that it's worth acknowledging is that I think sometimes there's support workers who don't know they're support workers yet. So this, once again, might be that wonderful hospitality worker, like the one that we mentioned, Kath and I mentioned before, or the retail worker. And COVID's actually taken a real hit to those industries. So there might be someone who has wonderful skills. They would be, they've got great customer service, they're obliging, they're helpful, they're friendly, they've got, so they might be people who would be just terrific social support workers, but they just don't know it yet. So, if you sort of can think of the place where you might find them, or put an ad out that might appeal to somebody who's not necessarily looking for disability support work, but could be interested and could be great.
Actually, I just wanted to say, I had a particularly favourite taxi driver, and you discovered how great that taxi driver was, and you persuaded him to become a support worker, and now I don't have my favourite taxi driver. But he's a very good support worker.
That is true. So it can go both ways.
Yeah.
So also looking at local Facebook groups, like most neighbourhoods have a Facebook group, or for the area. So that might be a place to put ads out, there might be interest groups in your area as well. So if you're looking for, a support worker to support you going fishing, then you might look at the Newcastle Fishing Co-op Facebook page or something like that. So it's sort of thinking about the sort of support worker you're looking for and whether you might find them. And of course, physical places where people might hang out as well. So, a notice board in the library, if you're looking for someone to help you build your literacy skills, might be the place where you'd look. If there's a letterbox drop in your neighbourhood, could be really useful. I've got a friend who just requires a little bit of support in the evening. It's a fairly short shift, just getting her up and getting her ready for bed, and it tends to be quite late at night, and it needs to be quite flexible. So what she's done is that she's gone around her neighbourhood with a letterbox drop, and found someone who just lives around the block who's providing that support. And that works ideal for both of them. And there's a lot of flexibility there. If she wants to have a late night out with friends, and there's flexibility there. She's not keeping her support worker waiting. She can just let her know when she'll be home. Her support worker just pops out for maybe half an hour or 3/4 of an hour and provides that support and pops home. And it's a real win-win situation. And we just really recommend having your feelers out, just having your fingers out all the time, looking for the right person, and not being afraid to say, have you thought about being a disability support worker? And, passing on your email address and seeing if they get in contact. On that note, I'm also going to talk about the importance of worker screening. I would say that we know providers are not always screening workers appropriately and properly. So we would suggest that you would always interview people and actually have some prepared questions. And you can have an informal get to know you as well, but really the interview it sort of just makes people, front up and be a little bit honest about who they are. Do your own reference checks. Now, if you're not sure how to do a reference check, Google reference checks, and there's some good questions there. But speak to people who know the person, who've possibly worked with the person before. It's not, they could do a first aid check, as a first aid certificate as well is important that they've got that. That's one of the tools of trade. And police checks. There's, in New South Wales, we have a Working with Children check. I always recommend that. We don't have a check for vulnerable people. And as a substitute, whether the person is an adult or a child, I'd always recommend you citing a Working with Children check. And this is something, regardless of how you engage a person, if they come via a service provider, you can ask that person to provide this information to you as a condition of working with you or your family member. So part of this is setting the tone from the start. So it doesn't matter how you engage your support worker. This is, setting the tone. So, you've worked out the skill set. You've got your job description, which gives the worker clear expectations about the job, about the outcomes you're wanting, the goals that you're hoping to achieve, your vision, and what you want to achieve. So that gives people clear expectations about what they're going to be about the job. Having an interview with prepared questions. And, once again, if you're wanting to know what a good interview questions are, Google interview questions. The website Seek, which is an employer website, has great questions for employers looking to employ people. And it doesn't matter if you're employing them or they're coming via an agency, you can still go through this process. Doesn't matter if you put a message up on a message board, you can still have this interview process.
Linda, can I just jump in there, sorry, and say
Yep.
One of the things that I've really found useful in coming up with my interviewing questions is to just chat informally with other people with disability and family members and find some of their great questions. So this person may be on the webinar, but a friend and a peer of mine recently said that she asks her support workers when she's interviewing them, what are your superpowers? Which I would find confronting in a job interview, but it's a really good question. Another person I met along the way wants meal prep and cooking as part of her support workers' skills. So she asked her support workers that she was interviewing, what's your signature dish? So very master chef, very, very fun. And yeah, so it's good to just learn from other people and get some nice kind of quirky questions, as well as the really important ones. Another friend of ours puts particular scenarios. So she's a person who uses a wheelchair, and she'll say things in her interview like, I'm out and about, there's not an accessible bathroom in the building I'm in, what would you do to try and solve that problem with me? So yeah. She doesn't want them to say, I'd take you home. so yeah, sometimes those scenario questions can be good as well.
Yeah. So she grills them. That friend of ours.
She's a bit tough.
But it's a good process. It's a really good process of working out if this person's the right person to support you. Once again, doing those checks, police checks, reference checks, and working with children checks. I can't stress how important that is. Being really clear about who the support worker is responsible to, and you know, even if they're with a provider, who are they responsible to? How's that arrangement work? They might still be responsible to the provider, but where do you fit in that process? And really having a clear understanding. It's good to think about, you know, that there being some clarity around training and policies and procedures. So for Jacob, we have, you know, quite a detailed induction process. And we've got quite a lot of policies and procedures. There's a lot of complexity to Jacob's support. And we had that all documented and available to support workers via our app that we use, our team app. So this is really important, particularly to the training and having policies and procedures, I think is really important to people who've got complex communication needs, or people who might not be able to tell their support workers exactly how they need to be supported. So Kath, I imagine that your policy book is much smaller than Jacob's, for example,
yes,
because you're able
yes.
to support the person yourself with the training.
Yeah, that's right. And I know that some people make videos of the things that like to complement or supplement that training. So obviously you do as much on the job training as you can, but if it's something that might be new to the person that you're that you've engaged as a support worker, sometimes just a video of, you know, somebody else supporting the person you're working with in that task can be useful.
And I've just looked at the time, so we better get on with it. You can get professional help where you need it, and you can use your NDIS funding for HR advice and things like that, and developing policies and procedures. So I'm going to the next slide, which is getting the best. So once again, it's clear communication with your support workers and them understanding your vision, goals, and the support needs. Orientation and induction. There's some free courses available which you can use. So Disability Services Consulting has free courses available to support workers. Certainly COVID training is a must at the moment, so people understand infection control. And as you said, Kath, having the information about how to do things, how we do things, available in a variety of formats, which might include a video or step-by-step instructions. The other, just going back to training, one of the things we do as well is we ensure that all of Jacob's staff have training in social role valorization through Foundations Forums. So that just really makes sure that our support workers really understand where we're coming from. So other things about to help get the best from your support workers, you know, is to celebrate victories and occasions. So, you know, making birthday cards or small gifts for birthdays. Having some flexibility and give and take on both sides. Sorry, just getting the best. And having regular reviews of performance and feedback, and providing, and Kath, you're going to talk about feedback in a moment, but providing feedback really, really frequently, but also having regular performance reviews. Team meetings, and I think that's really good if you've got a bigger team, or even if you've got more than one person, that you get together and ensure that everybody is on the same page. And the other thing just to be really careful about is knowing when to give individual feedback and when to do that within a team. It takes time to build trusting relationships. I used to think it took 3 months before I could train a support worker to work with my son, and then I realized it takes 3 months before I have trust for them to be working with my son. Kath, you're going to talk about the D.E.A.R framework for some of those harder conversations and providing feedback when perhaps you're not happy.
Sure. So yeah, as you said, Linda, we do need to give feedback, and we do need to be making sure that we're attending to things that come up as we go. And there's lots of frameworks around about how to have those difficult conversations when you do need to talk about something that you feel a bit awkward about raising. And I've just come across one quite recently that I really like, and it's a little acronym, so a word to help you remember it. And that word is D.E.A.R. I apologise to all the women that unfortunately it's D.E.A.R at the moment, but it helps you remember what you need to do. So I guess sometimes for me, the hardest bit is just getting started in the conversation. So it might be sort of describing what you want to talk about, which could be as simple as, Linda, something came up yesterday and I'm just wondering if we could have a chat about it. Or Linda, you were a little bit late for my shift yesterday, so would you mind if we chatted a bit more about that? And then the express, which is the E, it's just really saying how you felt. So when you were late yesterday morning, I felt really distressed and anxious because I had planned my day quite carefully, and I felt really worried that I wouldn't get to do what I needed to do. And the assert, I'm going quickly, sorry. The A is
take your time, Kath.
yeah, so express how you're feeling, and the A is for assert. So, or sometimes it's ask, I think of it as. So assert what you need. So you might need to say to your support worker really clearly, Linda, next time you're going to run late, I really need you to give me a call and let me know what's happening. And I also really need you to do whatever you can within your control to not run late for our work together. It's something that's really important to make our shifts go smoothly. And then just kind of reinforce that. So yeah, it really show them why it matters to you. So it really makes a difference to my day if we get started when we need to. Otherwise, I feel like I'm just behind all day. So I would be really appreciative if you could come when we've agreed to, or as I say, let me know if you can't be there. So that's kind of the D.E.A.R part. So you describe it, you express what you're feeling, you assert what you need, and then you just kind of reinforce why it's important and that you'd be a bit, you'd be really appreciative of it. And then the M.A.N part is kind of how you do it. So the D.E.A.R is what to say, and the M.A.N is how you're going to try and do it to keep yourself on track, basically. So that M is for mindful. Make sure that if you're feeling a little bit flustered during the conversation, or the support workers being a little bit defensive and justifying what they did, and you're feeling like you're losing your ground, just take a breath. And it's good to have what they call, as part of being mindful, it's good to have what they call a broken record comment. So if you're feeling like you're losing ground in that conversation and the person you're speaking with is just keeping on, telling you, but I did my best and there was traffic and my child was sick, and they're really valid things, but you have a fundamental message to get across. So to be mindful and to have a broken record is just to say, I really need you to call me when you're running late in the mornings. And no matter what they say, if you're feeling like you're losing ground, I really need you to call me when you're running late in the mornings. And it just helps you come back to what you need. It's good to try and appear confident. That's something I'm still working on. But, I can't see, but, they say it's good to make eye contact and try and keep your voice calm and confident. So do whatever you do to appear confident, even if actually you're not feeling it inside. And then sometimes you might want to negotiate. So sometimes around our stuff with support workers, there's not as much room for negotiation because some things can't change. But you might kind of say, so Linda, how does that feel? Do you think that calling me in the mornings when you're running late is something that would work for you? And if you were to say no, and I really, really wanted you as my support worker, then I might say, well, what do you think would work? So just negotiating how to move forward. So I really like it. It just gives me a framework. It's good to prepare in advance. So if I know I'm going to have a tough conversation with Linda, I might actually, in my mind, go through that D.E.A.R and say, well, what do I want to express? And what do I want to assert? So I've been doing a bit of reading around it, and they recommend that you actually rehearse it and just go through it in your mind. So just a framework that you mightn't have come across that might make something, give you a bit of a structure for those tough conversations.
And if I could add something to that, Kathy, to just be around this, a lot of this stuff isn't naturally easy for people.
Oh, it's
And
terrible.
the more that you do it, the more practiced, the more confident that you become. And so it's really good to have guidance around the steps that you have to consider.
Yeah, thanks, Cecile. I think so too.
Okay, there is some things which are unacceptable behaviour, and those things, many of those, so that's behaviour that could cause immediate harm or a threat to harm the health and safety of yourself or others. Theft, fraud, violence or threats of violence, being drunk at work, refusing to carry out duties or refusing to comply with WH&S. A lot of these things are reportable. So if you're using a provider or a platform and any of those unacceptable behaviours occur, then you should be reporting them to the platform. It might be that you need to report them to the police. Certainly, if there's a breach of the code of conduct, and I put a link to that in the resources, you should be contacting the Quality Safeguard Commission. So all people working with people with disabilities, registered or not, need to abide by the code of conduct. There's a New South Wales Aging and Disability Abuse Hotline. You could, you might need to report that person there. And if you're directly employing, and you need to do an immediate dismissal, I'd suggest also contacting Fair Work Australia, because there is some legislation around this and some legal obligations that you need to be aware of. So, Kath, I'm going on to deal breakers.
Yeah.
This is when it's not working, but it's not unacceptable, but it's not immediate dismissal behaviour, but certainly not working.
Absolutely. So I guess I came across the idea somewhere along the track, probably from somebody else wise, to think about your deal makers and your deal breakers. So your deal makers are the positive ones, like, oh, I really need someone with attention to detail. This person's got that. I really want someone who's happy to help me set up my blog. You know, so what are the things that are kind of your deal makers that'll help you decide if that's the person for you to think about working with? But then what also I find really helpful is to know what are the things that actually I'm not going to accept. As you say, Linda, they're not necessarily illegal or criminal or about my own health and safety, but things like when the job actually revolves around the worker and not around me. So if the worker's starting to say, oh, look, I thought I might change my shift with you on Saturday because I'm going to go to the, going to go and have coffee first, and it's just becoming about me fitting in with them. Obviously, there's a bit of flexibility, but if that's becoming the dominant thing, the support workers needs. Obviously, if there's a bit of a values mismatch, which we've talked about before, if I feel like the person's taking over and that they know better than I do, or they're just, making lots of decisions on my behalf. So trying to, just in my case, it might be quite small things, but it's more just the tone, as we've said. Obviously, if they're unreliable, if I feel like they're not trustworthy, if they're not acting in my best interests or the best interests of people with disability, if I don't feel respected, and for me, if they're speaking sort of for me or for people with disability rather than with me. So I guess this will vary a little bit depending on what a person's communication needs might be, but the concept and the philosophy are the same. So if I'm in a shop with my worker and he or she are sort of talking to the shopkeeper about what I need without my permission or in a way that actually excludes me and overrides me. And then just some I've come across more recently, I guess, is that sometimes a support worker might feel like they might make some assumptions that they kind of that I need them, and that that's they're making my life better, and they're making my life, without them, my life wouldn't be as good as it is. So just that kind of stuff around seeing themselves as in control and sort of superior. So for me, it's about mutuality. And if I feel like the person isn't seeing us as mutual and equals, then that would be a deal breaker.
Kath, I'm going to go to the next slide, so we can just people to think about what their deal breaker is.
Yeah.
And because I just would love to have an opportunity to ask questions. For some reason, my slide isn't going to the next one.
Is this the?
Yes, there we go. When it all goes well. And so we've got, I would think we would just, if we can, Kath, just wrap it up really quickly so we've got questions at the end.
Absolutely.
So there's a picture here of you driving a golf cart.
Yeah.
So do you want to just talk about that just briefly?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I've been thinking about, I was pretty anxious when a friend gave me an opportunity to drive a golf cart because I'm blind, and learning to organise. So it was freaky, but it was also fun and exhilarating. And so choosing your own support teams and your own support workers and managing them is a bit like that. It takes you a while to feel like you're in the driver's seat, but and you might, come close to a few trees in the golf course, but when you get it working, it's a really fun, liberating and freeing kind of experience and way to live your life, your best life.
And there's also a picture here with Jake and his support team and family members as well. And I suppose it's just really, no relationship is set and forget. So I think that there always is a little bit of managing to do with your team. But there's, amazing rewards of having your own support team around you that's actually picked for you. I think this works particularly well for my son and many others.
You pick for yourself.
Yeah, you pick for yourself, yeah. So we're going to go to a poll. So I'm really aware that we're running out of time very, very quickly.
Yeah, Linda, we've probably got about 5 extra minutes, so we're good.
Okay, cool. Okay. So, I did wrap it up very abruptly there, but I was just really looking at the clock and thinking I would like to have people to have an opportunity to ask questions. We've got the poll. The next poll is, do you feel more confident managing your support team? So Clara, are you able to launch that poll? And we might just move on. I don't think we're going to have time for people to look at the answers for that, but we'll move on to the next part.
Which is the questions.
Which is the question. So there's more information from Resourcing Inclusive Communities and Family Advocacy. So there's contact information there on the screen. You might not have that because you've got the poll on the screen at the moment. So once you finish the poll, you should see the next slide, which has information. And we've got a list of resources following that. So when that poll's down, is that people?
Yes, so we'll, I'll just be 1 second, they're still voting.
Okay, cool. So I'll go to the next slide anyway. So I've got a list of helpful resources, and many of them we've mentioned during the talk today. If there's anything else that you think that might be useful, let us know, and I can send that on to Resourcing Inclusive Communities who can forward it to you. So there's some information there about worker training that we've mentioned, and some resources for screening support workers and etc. And we can go to questions now. So
okay.
I will just stop my screen sharing. So if you want to click Q&A and to ask a question.
Yep, now we've got some questions here, Linda, so I'll shoot them off to you. So
okay, there we go.
Okay, so the advantages of self-managing compared to plan management, your insights on that, Linda and Kathy.
Kath, what do you think?
Look, I haven't ever plan managed. So I think, I'll hand that one to you, I think, Linda, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So the advantage of self-management is there's one advantage that's very difficult to directly employ if you're plan managed. There's just some functional aspects of the NDIA that make it almost impossible. Not completely impossible, but it's much more difficult to do. But if you don't want to directly employ, that's fine. The other aspect is that you need to abide by the price guide.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you're looking at innovative support, so for example, if plan managers vary. If you had a plan manager who understands innovative support, it's not such a problem. But we certainly know plan managers who wouldn't accept a invoice from a caterer for meal prep, but will happily accept one from a registered provider. So you've got more flexibility. You can determine whether your support needs are met through this service. I always recommend people look at page 8 of the NDIS guide to self-management.
Yeah.
There's a criteria there, and that helps you decide whether this is a support that you can use your NDIS funding for. But yeah, if you look at plan managers can be gatekeepers, so choose your plan manager well. If you're looking at really innovative ways of engaging support.
And sorry,
Okay.
Linda, the quick. Oh, sorry, Cecile. Just really.
No,
quickly.
you go. You're fine. You're fine.
Just really quickly. I mean, I used to think that, obviously the advantage of plan managing, if you like, is that you have assistance with your admin, and that is what a lot of people are under the impression that self-managing is too difficult. And I kind of say, if I can do it, anyone can. But having said that, I do get some assistance from my admin assistant and bookkeeper. So in a sense, I get the admin support that I'm looking for from a plan manager, but I have the flexibility and freedom to choose those innovative supports and what I'm prepared to pay for them.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, ladies. Now, just one comment on that. We've got a participant that's actually said it's less stressful to self-manage because you don't have to deal with other people's mistakes, other services' mistakes.
That's true.
Very
That's
common
true.
piece of feedback that we get,
Yes.
actually.
Yeah.
So one's about, we've got 2 questions actually around insurance. Just when you're directly employing staff, insurance and payroll, is there anything that either one of you or both of you would like to add to that?
I would definitely seek professional advice. I can't provide advice on that. I know what I do, but seek professional advice, because we often hear these questions asked. If you're looking at insurance, talk to an insurance broker. If you're looking at workers' compensation insurance, talk to your state-based insurer. So that would be iCare in New South Wales. So talk to them or talk to an insurance broker, because this stuff is really important, and I don't have the expertise to tell you, but I can point you in the direction.
Okay, wonderful. Now, we've actually had a couple of questions. Linda, I think you mentioned this team app. What team app do you use?
I use a team app called Podio. There's other apps like Slack that people might be aware of. I find Podio really lovely. Everyone puts in their everyone goes through a list of things that they need to do. It's all there in the team app. We've got special apps within the app, I suppose, which where one of the big focuses for Jacob is to build relationships. So we have a relationships app within the app where it's documented the connections Jacob has in the community, when he runs into people, when they're meeting up next. And it means that if Jake's not with the same support worker, that everybody knows who is who. So if Jake sort of meets someone with Jane and they get to know each other a little bit, and then he's out with Lucy, then Lucy knows that this is Joe Bloggs, and Jacob and Joe Bloggs both share an interest in Harry Potter, for example. So there's various ones out there, but Podio is the one I like, but there's others as well. So
okay, anything from you on that, Kathy? Or
no, not really. Just I think it's really good to have a straightforward, easy to use central. I haven't. I do things like share task lists with my support worker, but I don't actually have a Teams approach.
The other thing we used before that was a Facebook page, just a private Facebook page, which was just for the support team and circle members.
Yeah,
so that's a really simple way of perhaps more social information, rather than have you covered all the tasks that you need to do today. But yeah, it's
any of those social. I mean, people use WhatsApp. Any of those things.
Yeah.
Can you spell Podio, Linda? We've had a question to spell it.
P-O-D.
P-O-D-I-O. It's P-O-D-I-O.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah,
okay,
Podio.
Wonderful. All right, so we've got a question here. Can you hire a therapist assistant through ABN Sole Trader, or is it only for support worker?
Both. Yeah, no,
you could.
So, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
The issue about there's a thing in the price guide of the NDIA around support, therapy assistants need to be under the insurance. It's a strange little thing, under the insurance of the supervising therapist. I'm not sure how that applies to self-managers, because this price guide doesn't necessarily apply to self-managers. But there is scope to, if there's other areas within improved social. So this is particularly looking at a capacity building budget. I'm assuming that's the capacity building budget, improved daily living. So there is capacity to do it under having a therapy assistant, but there is a funny little thing in there. So once again, it's who would you seek advice from? Probably just go through the checklist on page 8 of a self-management guide. That's my recommendation all the time. There's a number of different ways you could engage a person to assist in training a person with a disability who and use your funding for it. But yes, you can engage someone with an ABN.
Yeah, okay, so we've got a question. If a participant wants to directly employ their own staff but don't want to self-manage their entire plan, what parts of the plan do they need to self-manage?
If you wanted to engage your supports, directly employ your support staff or a support team, then that tends to be your core funding. So you'd ask the NDIS to self-manage your core funding, so you could do it, and then have the remaining part of the plan managed. There are plan managers who will do it, but there's not many. Most plan managers just haven't got their head around how they'd possibly do it.
Okay. This might be something that you've referred to as far as, you know, HR companies and all the rest of it, but should you have a contract for your of employment, and should that have the information around instant dismissal in there?
Yeah, look, I think it's a good idea to have that covered. So there is there's, you know, Fair Work have a draft employment contract, so you can, you know, start there if you wanted to. There is scope to use your funding for HR advice. You know, there might be other organisations. The business chamber might be able to assist you. Perhaps the local union office might be able to assist you as well. There might be other people who have expertise in engaging employees who might be able to assist there. I haven't used a HR company until just recently, but that's as we're looking at shifting support workers from casual to permanent.
Yeah, and I'd probably also add to that too, because you've got to be really careful with those sort of things unless you're being all inclusive of all the content. You've got to be mindful of how it's written, so it's always good to get third-party expert advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so how hard is it to swap from plan management to self-management? Do either one of you ladies have any intel on that?
Oh, I do. Yeah. So, look, it's hard mid-plan. It can be difficult mid-plan. It shouldn't be, but it is. I think it's, you know, quite often it's good to leave it till the end of the plan, and when you go for review, say hello. But if you've got a 2-year plan and it's, you know, it's a long time, and then it's worth definitely signalling with your LAC or your planner that you'd like to change the type of management.
Yeah. Okay, we've got one last question, which is, which category does HR funding come from in your plan?
It comes from core. There's a line item in the core budget called assistance with self-management, and that would be the appropriate line item. Of course, self-managers don't need to claim at the line item level, but it's just, that's for your information more than anything. If anyone has the time to go through the price guide item by item, then that would be the item. It's assistance to self-manage.
Yeah, wonderful. And that's all of our questions.
That's great.
Oh, only 10 minutes over. I want to thank everybody for coming along today and joining in this webinar.